A pro studio versus a home studio. I'm in a professional studio right now, and I'm going to talk about 5 things this studio has that maybe your home studio doesn't have. However, that's okay. Nowadays, home studios and professional studios are marginally different just because of the technology and the cost of everything you can get in your home studio. But I'm going to go over 5 things that are in this professional studio right now that might not be in your home studio, but where you can go and get those things, or at least find them at an affordable cost to make your home studio more professional. Number 1, and by far the most important, is your listening environment. How well you can hear the sound of what you're making, because at the end of the day, we are making music and we need to have the right environment to actually hear what we're making. In all professional studios, you're gonna have a control room or maybe a mixing room, somewhere where you can actually hear the actual sound of what you're making, and it's perfectly treated the room where you're getting the actual result and what's coming out of the speakers. So in this professional studio, for example, we have a set of PCM speakers, the big black ones behind me in the wall, which can range from anywhere to like $10,000 up to $20,000. So these are really expensive speakers. A lot of professional studios will have these type of speakers or different brands, but that at that level. And then behind me, right on the desk here, are 2 sets of, or 1 set of mixing speakers. And then over the right, there's the Ortone, which kind of emulate that kind of crappy car speaker that really does the mids and the highs in your mix. Not only the speakers, it's this room is fully treated. So there's no like reverberation. There's not a lot of, it's dry, but not too dry. So you're really getting the actual sound of what you're making and what your song is about. There's acoustic panelings everywhere in the room. There's bass traps in the corners, and there's acoustic panelings on the ceiling as well, and a carpeted floor. So it's dry enough, but it's not too dry. If it's too dry, your room, it just might be dead, you know. It might lose inspiration even when you're making music. So you don't want it too dry, but you want it dry enough where you can actually like get the quality sound of what you're making. So that's what professional studios have. In your home studio, you might be in your bedroom, you might be in your living room, you might be in your kitchen, whatever. Your listening environment might not be that good or might not get to this level. However, you can make it pretty good. And you can do that by just getting some foam and making sure like the corners are filled with foam, because these are going to be where the bass is really booming and it can really make your room sound muddy. If you're in a fully glass box, that might not be the best place to have a studio. Glass windows are fine. They're not great because the sound's going to bounce off them. But sometimes, for me, I like windows in my studio because I like looking outside. That's more of a benefit for me, is looking outside versus having the sound bounce off the glass. And the second thing you can do is you can get these, I'll leave one link in the description because I can't think of it right now, but it's these measuring mics where you can rent or buy. They might be like $100, and then you attach it with a software in your computer, and it's just gonna measure the quality of your room. And then it's going to change how your speakers sound in that room by providing you with like a little EQ on your speakers. And that's going to remove all that bad stuff in the room that's bouncing and the phasing issues in your room that's making your listening environment not as quality as it could be. The second thing in a professional studio that you likely don't have in your home studio is the amount of preamps and like digital converters in a professional studio that you wouldn't have in a home studio. So if you don't know what any of that means, it's not that big of a deal, to be honest. Most home studios have like audio interfaces, right? You might have a Scarlett 2-channel, like with the red box, or an Apogee Duet, or an Apollo Twin, where it's just a box. You put your microphone in and that goes to your computer, and that's fine. Mostly all the new interfaces have preamps and converters inside the box, where in a professional studio, you would likely have a preamp box and then a digital converter box, and the microphone runs into the preamp box and then into the converter box and then into your computer. And you can get different types of preamps because they're going to sound a little different. Each preamp is going to have a different quality, right? So in a professional studio here, onto the right side of me, we have a whole like stack of preamps with different styles of preamps. because the preamps also have EQs, and you can shape the sound a little bit before it gets into the converter. Whereas your home studio audio interface doesn't have an EQ on it. It just amplifies the sound. That's what a preamp does. It makes it louder, and then the converter changes it to a digital signal so your computer can understand it. So the idea on a professional studio is like, you're making an album and you're recording the piano, or you're doing a vocal and you're like, oh, I really think this vocal would pair well with the Neve preamp, and I'm going to EQ it a little bit to shape the sound before it gets into your computer. How can you get this type of professional studio sound in your home studio? Well, you can't really unless you go and buy a preamp and an audio converter, but you likely already have one. You have that audio interface, which is already these things. It's just extending it further so you can get different tastes and colors out of different styles of preamps. However, you can do this thing in the box on your computer. You can run your vocal signal through it in the box like software preamp before, it gets recorded. So you can emulate this stuff with software in your home studio. You can test out different interfaces. Each interface is going to have a different quality of preamps. That's why there's a really big difference in cost in different styles of audio interfaces, because it's the quality of the preamps in the interface. So it's really a question of what are you recording in your home studio. Professional studios will have all these preamps because there's so many different people coming into their studio that want different types of flavor and different color. There's orchestras coming and they're recording strings and recording pianos, and there's pop artists coming, there's folk artists coming, there's classical artists coming. You never know what someone wants in a professional studio. You have to offer that stuff and all these different types of colors. And then behind me and over here, we have all these different types of EQs and compressors where you can feed the signal in before it lands in Logic or in your computer. And this is what all professional studios will have. And they're connected by this thing called a patch bay, which you may or may not have heard before. But this is basically, it's just like, because your vocal, let's say you're recording a vocal and you want it to go into a preamp and then a compressor and then an EQ and then another compressor or whatever, the signal has to go through a maze of boxes, right? And it's a chain basically. And a patch bay just is like the organization system to plug in the different compressors and have that vocal signal go through. It's basically like, when you're watching Mad Men or those old shows and there's people in a room connecting wires to connect people on the phone. That's what a patch bay system is, but you're just connecting the different compressors and stuff together. You can do all this stuff in the box. Afterwards, if you want to go the extra distance, just like getting a preamp, you can get a compressor. Likely you'll see these in some home studios where people will be taking pictures of their home studios and there's some boxes on their desk. That's what that kind of stuff is. It's a compressor, it's an EQ, it's a preamp. That's the outboard gear. And then maybe they don't have a patch bay because if it's only one or two boxes, you don't need this patch bay where you have all these wires. But as soon as you get 2, 3, 4 into the 10s and 20s of these boxes, you're going to need a little patch bay that organizes all these things so you don't have to be going all over the room being where's the signal and how am I plugging all these things in. The third thing that a professional studio will have is the flexibility to do multiple types of different styles of recordings. And this is a no-brainer for studios because you expect when you're going to a professional studio that you're going to have different types of musicians and different styles of music that you need to offer these styles of things. In a home studio, it's likely just you, or maybe you are a producer and you produce a certain style of music that you can get the quality of sound just with the certain gear that you have. For example, a professional studio will likely have a live room. So off to the side of me over here is a live room where you can record a live band, where you can mic up the drums and the guitar and the bass and the singer and everything and record them all here, multi-track recording, record the live band. or you can do overdubs in the live room, or there's a vocal booth where you can record vocals and super dry in there. You can get a super nice vocal recording. It's likely you won't have in your home studio, and you don't need an SSL board and a tape machine and all this stuff. If you want that stuff, you can always do it in the box in your computer with software. You can run it through a tape machine, you can run it through an SSL board. The fourth and the fifth thing, I actually had them separated, but I'm going to put them in one thing just because it involves a similar thing, which is gear and equipment. So that includes a lot of things like synthesizers, pianos, guitars, bass amps, guitar amps, microphones, all the stuff you see around me. You will have this stuff in a professional studio. So this is 4 and 5 for a professional studio. And so the first thing in that little 4 and 5 is synthesizers. So usually in home studios, you would have all these in the box style synths, right? Where in professional studios, you'll likely have these real synthesizers, whether it's like a Juno synth or a Prophet synth or a DX7 synth or a Vermona synth. In my personal opinion, with the synthesizers, a more warm and rich sound from the analog synths that you can't get from the in-the-box synths. And actually, it's just more fun to play with the knobs and stuff on the synth versus doing it in the box. I still have the in-the-box synths, and I use them every day too. I don't have the synthesizers in my home studio, but it's something that I want to get. And you can, if you want to level up to that more professional studio in your home studio, you can get an analog synth. Maybe start with one that you use a lot in the box. That's synthesizers. We also have pianos too. Do you have an acoustic piano? Maybe you just have a keyboard you play in your MIDI controller. Maybe you can get an acoustic piano to level up your sound. In professional studios, you will always have a piano to record a piano. Maybe you have multiple pianos in a professional studio as well, a grand recording room. But if you're playing piano a lot, maybe you do want an upright piano where you can put in your room and put a pair of stereo microphones there. You can get a rich sound of piano that will level up your sound a little more. So besides pianos, we have guitars. In a professional studio, you're gonna have probably at minimum like 15-20 guitars, where you can choose from acoustic guitars, bass guitars, electric guitars, and then not only the guitars, likely different guitar amps and different styles of amps too. Drums is another one. Similar to guitars, you might have 2 or 3 different style of drum sets with maybe just a drum room alone, multiple snares, multiple bass drums. And if you're in a home studio, your neighbors probably won't be too happy if you get drums. And microphones is the final one. You'll likely have a huge selection of microphones because you're recording so many different types of sound too. In your home studio, you're likely not recording so many different styles of sounds, right? So you don't need so many microphones, but maybe get a really good microphone for your voice. And if you're recording acoustic guitar, for example, maybe you can get a really good microphone like to record guitar, or if you're recording piano, get a pair of stereo microphones to record piano. I would say choose whatever like your instrument is, or if your voice, and get a good microphone for that thing, and that's all you really need in your home studio. But the most important is have a good listening environment for the sound you're actually creating, and then 2, like consider if you're recording sound, have the flow of recording to be quality. Maybe a better microphone, maybe a better preamp, this kind of thing. So, but don't get too worried about this, the quality of everything. If you're just getting started, just get started with something, because over time your ear is going to be trained better, so you can actually start to understand the difference of things. Super curious to hear how you guys level up your sound in your home studios. So let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.